The haunted sleepover. My friends and I decided to have a sleepover in my old, creaky house. It was a perfect setting for some spooky stories and late-night scares. We gathered in the dimly lit living room, clutching our flashlights. As we exchanged tales, I shared a legend about the previous owner, a recluse who died under mysterious circumstances. They say his spirit still haunts the place. My friends laughed it off, but as the night wore on, unease settled in. In the dead of night, we heard faint whispers and footsteps echoing through the empty halls. The laughter turned into nervous glances, and we huddled together, fearing the worst. The sound grew louder, moving closer to the living room. As we huddled together in the dimly lit living room, the eerie voice continued to echo from the shadows. "I've been waiting for you," it repeated, each word sending shivers down our spines. The room grew colder, and the air seemed to thicken with an otherworldly presence. Fear coursed through us as we watched the ghostly figure of the old owner materialize before our eyes. He wore tattered, threadbare clothing, and his eyes glowed with a malevolent intensity. His voice, a raspy whisper, filled the room as he recounted his tragic tale. The previous owner had been a recluse, shunned by the townsfolk, and he had met a grisly end in this very house. His ghostly form bore the scars of his torment, and he blamed the living for his suffering. He had been trapped here, unable to find peace, until our ill-fated sleepover. Desperation overwhelmed us as we realized there was no escape. The specter advanced, his cold, ethereal fingers reaching out towards us. We closed our eyes and braced for the inevitable, but then, as if by some unseen force, the room erupted in a blinding flash of light. When we dared to open our eyes, we found ourselves outside the house, our hearts still pounding with terror. The old house loomed in the background, its windows dark and foreboding. We knew that we could never return. Years later, I still bear the scars of that haunted sleepover. The memory of the vengeful spirit and his eerie whispers lingers, a constant reminder of the night we dared to stay in that cursed house. Some legends, it seems, are not meant to be shared, and some nightmares are best left undisturbed. The Midnight Game. One fateful sleepover, we decided to play the Midnight Game, a supernatural ritual rumored to summon a sinister presence. Ignoring the warnings, we lit a candle and wrote our names on pieces of paper. At the stroke of midnight, we placed the papers in a circle and whispered, "Midnight Man, come play." The air grew heavy, and a shadowy figure emerged from the darkness. Panic set in as we realized we had unleashed something beyond our control. As the Midnight Man toyed with us, we clung to each other in a state of sheer terror. The room grew frigid, and our breaths hung in the air like ghostly apparitions. Shadows danced menacingly on the walls, and the oppressive darkness seemed to seep into our very souls. The Midnight Man had an eerie ability to predict our movements, always staying one step ahead. He whispered chilling threats, promising to claim our souls as his own. Panic gnawed at our sanity as we desperately searched for a way to break free from this sinister game. Hours passed like an eternity, and it felt as though we were trapped in a never-ending nightmare. We attempted to restart the ritual, believing that completing it might banish the Midnight Man. But each time we tried, he thwarted our efforts, sending objects flying and extinguishing our candles. At the brink of exhaustion, with hope dwindling, we made a last-ditch effort. We joined hands and chanted the ritual backward, our voices trembling with fear. In that moment, the room convulsed with an otherworldly force, and the Midnight Man let out a blood-curdling scream. Suddenly, we found ourselves back in the dimly lit room. The candles burned low, and the sun's first light casting feeble rays through the windows. The oppressive atmosphere had lifted, and the presence of the Midnight Man had vanished. We were shaken, bruised, and utterly changed by the night's events. The Midnight Game had nearly claimed us, but we had managed to break free from its sinister grip. We vowed never to play with forces beyond our understanding again. In the aftermath, we tried to forget that horrific night, but the memory of the Midnight Man still haunts us. The supernatural ritual had shown us that there are realms of darkness beyond our comprehension, lurking just beyond the veil of reality. and sometimes those realms demand a heavy price for their secrets. The uninvited guest. My sleepover with friends was meant to be a night of fun and games, but it turned into a nightmare none of us will ever forget. We played board games, watched scary movies, and ate junk food until the early hours. But as the night grew darker, an eerie feeling settled over us. We heard faint, inexplicable noises coming from the attic. Ignoring it, we continued our activities, chalking it up to the old house's quirks. Then, we heard the attic door creak open. Fear gripped us as we realized that none of us had gone up there. We huddled together in the living room, clutching our flashlights. Footsteps echoed down the stairs, slow and deliberate. Our hearts pounded as the footsteps grew closer, and a cold presence enveloped us. We shone our flashlights toward the stairs, revealing a pale, gaunt figure in ragged clothes. The pale, gaunt figure in ragged clothes remained at the bottom of the stairs, bathed in the eerie glow of our flashlights. We couldn't tear our eyes away from him as he stood there, unmoving, his eyes fixated on us. With trembling hands, I managed to dial 911 on my phone. The operator's voice was a lifeline as I stammered out our address, desperately pleading for help. But as I glanced up, the figure had vanished, leaving only an empty, foreboding silence in its wake. The police arrived within minutes, their flashing lights piercing the darkness. We recounted our harrowing ordeal, but they found no evidence of an intruder or forced entry. Their skepticism weighed on us, as if we had all shared a collective nightmare. The officers assured us that it was safe to stay in the house, but none of us could bear the thought of spending another moment there. We decided to spend the night at a friend's house, leaving behind the ominous shadows and unanswered questions that lingered in that old, unsettling home. In the days that followed, we tried to rationalize what had occurred that night, but we couldn't escape the feeling that we had encountered something beyond explanation. The house sat silent and abandoned, a place of dread and mystery. Years later, curiosity got the better of us, and we revisited the house, determined to uncover the truth. As we stepped inside, the air grew heavy with memories, and we retraced our steps to the stairs where we had first seen the intruder. There, etched into the wooden banister, was a message: "I'm always with you." A chill ran down our spines as we realized that the uninvited guest had left his mark, a chilling reminder that some encounters with the unknown are destined to remain unsolved mysteries. We left the house once more, haunted by the knowledge that the past could never truly be buried. The uninvited guest had left his mark on our lives, a lingering presence that defied explanation and refused to be forgotten. Please subscribe and hit the like button to support this channel for more scary horror stories, and please leave a comment too.